Hello everyone, welcome to the flu webinar. I can see there's quite a few people arriving. Probably give a second or two before we actually start the full work programme. Just a few housekeeping issues to let you know. Can you keep questions to the end, but please do put questions in the chat box. We will publish the slides, so you can ask for them, but we will definitely publish them anyway on our website and via the chat, and they'll be sent round to everyone who's present in the workshop. We'll also put a link into a feedback form, so it'd be really helpful if you could complete that either before the end or you know, shortly after, so that we get some feedback on our webinars and we can think about future webinars that you might want. It is recording, and we will put the recording of this on the website again for any of your colleagues who can't make this. And with no further ado, I shall hand you over to Anna, our presenter today.
Hello, everybody. I don't think I know many of you today, but I'm the Senior Primary Care Facilitator for Tahoe and Waltham Forest. Many of my references will be to IMI system because I'm more used to it, but we do all our products in System 1 as well, even though there is usually a little bit of a delay. I also tend to use more examples from Tahoe and Waltham Forest because it's where I feel more comfortable. But again, we produce everything in all the localities, in all the 7 localities that we use. Also to say that this is a very fast-paced session because there is a lot to cover, but don't worry, because you are going to have all the resources to go back through the recording, the slides, and things like frequently asked questions, etc., etc. So you'll be fine. Right.
I'm sorry, it seems like somebody has just shared their screen.
Oh dear.
I'm not sure. Is it Vicky Hind?
I'm just forgetting.
Just one moment.
I'm forgetting.
If you could just stop presenting for me. Gosh. Here we go.
Right. So I should be able to put my slides now, shouldn't I?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, so very quickly, we are going to go through who's eligible, how to maximize your uptake, how you monitor it, how to get paid, and how to capture data appropriately. We'll start with what is new this year. So there is a new group that is there's a group that's new this year, which is the 50 to 64-year-olds who are not at clinical risk. However, be aware that NHS England have said that they will only become eligible in November, subject to vaccine availability. So you should not be contacting them at this point. There is a new group as well, which is the household contacts of patients in the shielding list. This is only on an opportunistic basis. You are not supposed to be proactively calling them in because it would be very difficult for you to identify them all. And I think that's why it's opportunistic. They have issued a new code, lives with immunocompromised patient, that can be used to code them if you want to be able to identify them. But I think it's going to be too late for you for that, to be honest. You are also encouraged to vaccinate opportunistically again people who are employed in care homes or who are care providers on a private basis as well. I have queries before about how to vaccinate your staff. This year you are allowed to vaccinate your staff. You have to do a written instruction, and if you click on the link, you will be able to find the instruction that you have to fill in, and also you've got information there. Click there, and you know how to claim through Inform to be paid to get reimbursement for that. Now, in general, who's eligible in general? We get lots and lots of queries, and we've got a very comprehensive document of frequently asked questions that you will receive in a little while, which explains in detail what the problems are, because we get lots of queries about, well, this patient should be getting a flu vaccine, but he's not coming up as eligible. Or on the other hand, very many of you find patients and you go like, there is absolutely no reason why this patient should be getting a flu vaccine, but he comes as eligible. This is because of how the searches get done. So how it works is normally, like for court, for example, NHS Digital writes what is called the business rules, which are a set of codes. And then the clinical system suppliers such as EMIS and System 1 will translate them into a search that they publish into, for example, the EMIS library. When their searches are not, when we consider their searches are not comprehensive enough, in the sense that they don't give you enough detail, we would copy their definitions and give you more utilities in our searches. So if you think about it, the codes that we're using come from EMIS or System 1, and those ones come from Primis. So it's a long way to come to reach a search. And of course, Primis has written the searches on the basis of what is the narrative in the DES specification. So the narrative, for example, will say immunocompromised patients should have a flu jab, but then Primis translates that into a series of codes, and not all, and they sometimes miss some, and sometimes include some they shouldn't. So that's where the problems are coming from. And a perfect example of this is the shielding patients this year. There is no, because the specifications doesn't specifically say shielding patients are entitled to a flu jab, they just assume that it will fall under the other categories. Primis have not included the code for high risk of COVID into their business rules, which is why at locality level, 1,000 patients per locality who are shielding and who are not, in theory, not entitled to a flu jab. However, most localities have, most CCGs have said that that is at your clinical discretion, and of course, they would expect you to vaccinate them. They will not form part of your performance because they are not in the denominator for the uptake, but they would expect that you would be vaccinated them. There's some things that you can, the other reason why we copy the system supplier searches and adapt them is because last year and the years previously, clinical system suppliers were not including all the patients with learning disabilities. And instead, they were including children who should be vaccinated at school, which is a bit bad because you're not supposed to be calling in children when they're going to be vaccinated at school. So those had some of the reasons. So there's some things that you can do in terms of adding a patient to the eligible cohort. So there are some codes that you can use, like, for example, patient immunocompromised or immunodeficiency secondary to chemotherapy, for example. These codes are in your document that you're going to receive later, and that will add them to an eligible cohort. So that's what you can do. As for the patients who are not supposed to have one, well, first of all, you need to make sure that they are not eligible for one, because there might be something in the code that you have missed. But if they really are not, then you can put flu vaccination not indicated. Again, that's in the documentation that you will receive later. So now I'm going to try and log on to EMIS to explain this a little bit more clearly. Fingers crossed, I'm not going to get disconnected, because that sometimes happens. Okay, so this is an example. This is where I have my recall searches in Tower Hamlets under immunizations. And this is the way they are structured. So here is all the eligible patients. Again, remember, this is copied from IMIS, but we've added the learning disabilities patients and removed the school children. So those are all the patients that are eligible. So if you use the population included, I can't do it here because I have no patients, but if you click on population included, right click on one of the patients and use the check patient function, it will tell you why they have been included. If you don't know how to do this, please contact your locality facilitator. These are the patients you would need to be calling in because they haven't been vaccinated yet, they haven't refused, there are no contraindications. But we've done some extra categories. I mean, they're the same patients, but if you want to focus just on one particular group, you can do so. You can, for example, focus on pregnant with risk or on children at risk or over 65, whatever you want. Also, we've created, again, from the same eligible cohort, these are not new patients, they're the same patients. You might want to focus on other special priority groups such as care home residents, carers, housebound or learning disabilities, because you might want to address the invitations in a different way. And you can monitor the invites you have sent to see that how you're doing. And then we come to the crucial bit, which is the ones who are not eligible under these business rules. We're not saying that they're not clinically eligible, they're not eligible under the computer says no. So, but if you look at it, we've got the sealed-in patients. Obviously, the computer might say no, but that clinically is very important to vaccinate the shielding patients. Or you could also vaccinate also the homeless as well, particularly in London. Patients who have had a COVID infection and hospital admission, even though there is very limited data on that, or people you already vaccinated last year at clinical discretion, because it might be that their circumstances are still the same. And finally, and we have learned this through giving other webinars, it turns out that some of the patients who are eligible for flu vaccination under QOF are not being picked up in the DES rules. So again, we're giving you a search to address that. Hopefully, once the new rules, which have come out very late, are implemented, these will be resolved, but we can't be sure. So in the meantime, just go with this. There are other things that you want to do, and they are under the supplementary searches. This is not about recall, this is about data issues. So, for example, or also about monitoring stock, for example. The top one, 2 and 3 year olds who are not at clinical risk, who have been given an injectable vaccine. In theory, well, NHS England said that if there are enough vaccines in November, you will be able to give injectable to these children subject to vaccine availability, but they are not recommending that you do it now. I mean, we do know that some people will apply clinical discretion, and if they think it's going to be almost impossible to get these parents to accept a vaccination at a later date, they might do it now. But you still need to keep an eye and see that, and you're not doing too many of those. Then we've got, are all these women still pregnant? The way pregnancy is done by primaries is very, very, very complicated, and it doesn't always work. I've given you more instructions about how to clear up your pregnancy register in the frequently asked questions document, but this is the search to go to clear your pregnancy register. And then we've got all the patients have been vaccinated all together. It doesn't matter if they're still here, because very often practices come to us and say, oh, your recall searches are not capturing patients that are vaccinated, or your dashboard searches are not capturing. That's because those searches are for something else. This is everybody who's been vaccinated, even if they're no longer in the practice. And these are the ones that have been vaccinated by you. So those are the vaccines that you've actually got out of your stock. And then we've got the patients vaccinated not eligible. We were talking about that, clinical discretion. And the ones who are missing the payment code. So if you want to be paid, and that comes in slide later, you need to need the NIS influenza vaccination, immunization. You don't need to add this to everybody. You just need to add it for those patients who are in theory not eligible. We always recommend that in the free text next to it, you write why you consider they are eligible, because that is very useful for auditing purposes later on. If, for example, any citizen were to say that you have vaccinated too many, for example. And finally, we've got patients vaccinated with non-QOF codes. Unfortunately, there are still a few people who are using non-QOF codes. Remember that last year the rules were changed, and the old code seasonal influenza vaccination is no longer admissible, let alone the one that says influenza vaccination. If it hasn't got the word seasonal, it's not valid. And if it hasn't got the word first, it's not valid either. It's a bit mad when most people only need one vaccination, not two, but that is the way it is. So that is to help you out. That's about recall and data quality and how to get paid. For monitoring purposes, what your uptake is, we are producing weekly dashboards. So your locality one will be published on Tuesdays, unless there is a delay with the way IMIS is running. And the NEL one is published on Fridays. But if you are dying to find out how you're doing in between, you can go to the dashboard searches and check it live. But you don't need to do this, seriously. Just a consideration, because we've had this question before. When it says vaccinated here, that means vaccinated by you. And then you've got vaccinated by other providers. So when you go to the dashboard, these two amounts will be amalgamated, because all of them count for your uptake. And remember that the target is 75% for everything this year. This is what the dashboard, one of our dashboards might look like. And I've noticed that all localities in NEL are performing like more or less at double the best from last year. So it's very, very encouraging. You're doing a very good job under very challenging circumstances. This is what the NEL dashboard looks like. This is not the latest one. I think it's 11th of October. But at the time, Redbridge was well ahead. So congratulations, Redbridge. I've already been through this in IMIS. This is what our template looks like. So you can see that the QOF compliant codes have got a star, and this NIS influenza vaccination is there just if they are not eligible. So if you don't get a pop-up alert saying this patient is eligible, you better pop a tick in there and write why you've done it. What about the money? £10 per dose for eligible patients. So remember, but you can make a person eligible for payment by adding this code that we've just pointed out. And of course, this year, a lot of QOF points. A QOF point is worth £195 per average size practice, and there are 36 points for QOF for flu. So get going. We've also provided you with recall searches for pneumococcal vaccination and for the shingles vaccination in the same folder I show you immunizations and the practice support searches and reports. Remember that pneumococcal is definitely on a call recall basis, so you have to call them in. But of course, you will also get pop-ups. The searches are provisional because we've just copied the IMIS ones and updated the dates. This is because there is no way we could write them from scratch, because they've got thousands and thousands and thousands upon thousands of codes. We would not have the resources to do that ourselves, just to be a little bit ahead of IMIS or System 1. So as I said, you're going to have all these other resources about QOF codes, links to specifications, vaccine information, where to find searches in System 1, all sorts, how to clean your pregnancy register. So please do read those documents. And if you have any queries, do not hesitate to contact your primary care facilitator. And now I'll stop sharing and I can take questions. Here we go. So what have I got? Have I got any questions, Lacey?
No, so I have no questions in the chat at the moment.
Okay.
If anybody would like to ask a question, please raise your hand on the little icon, raise your hand, and then we'll go as it comes in.
Oh, and by the way, I've forgotten to remind you that this year is a requirement to make sure that when you vaccinate, you check that the patient has got ethnicity recorded. This should be very easy because we've provided you with an alert. So if the patient hasn't got ethnicity recorded, you will get a little flash on the corner. No questions.
No,
I'm surprised at this. I'm surprised at this because this is a very difficult subject. Come on, don't be shy.
You've clearly done such a good job, Anna. Everyone knows what to do.
I mean, to be honest, if you're shy now or you are not sure, don't worry about it. You can ask us later. It's not a problem.
So we do have one that's just popped up for you, Anna. What happens if you don't have ethnicity recorded?
I don't think anything happens. I mean, I haven't seen any punitive measures described. It's one of those things that they pop into the specification, but I'm not sure if they're going to monitor or not. But it's very easy that they would ask us to monitor it and say, so, you know, you really want to be careful.
And NHS England wants pretty much 100% ethnicity recording in all at-risk groups. So yeah, there will be pressure from above then through the CCGs in terms of pop-ups and protocols and searches to identify patients who don't have ethnicity. I mean, it is really critical to record ethnicity, so we would strongly encourage you to do it as every opportunity you get.
Since there is no questions, maybe I can expand a little bit more on the pregnancy issue. So the way it is done, and we didn't design it, believe me, I wouldn't have designed it like that. They have like two big code groups that they take to signify pregnant and stop being pregnant. And they're massive codes. So you've got all sorts like antenatal and postnatal and all sorts of things. So what they do is they search for all these codes, pick up the very latest. And if the very latest is what they consider being pregnant code, the patient is pregnant. So to give you an example, if you code that the patient has delivered, and then you do a postnatal check, for example, and you enter that the patient is accepted for to be pregnant, that makes the patient pregnant again. So you don't want to do that. Unless after doing that, you enter another code that says postnatal check, and then she stops being pregnant again. I know it's very complicated, but you really need to do it. I've also found out that there is a code that says non-pregnant, not pregnant, and they're not using it. So so if you've got a patient that said that she was pregnant, and you know, for example, that they've had a termination, and now you are reviewing them, and you don't just put not pregnant, put patient termination with a date, even if it's approximate date. Is that clear? Well, clear as mud, but you know. I think someone has got Susan.
Yeah. Hi. We found that we had problems when we changed over onto SNOMED codes, because before that, for the pregnant ladies, we had to identify them as currently pregnant. And now, and when we were doing our searches, we found a lot of our ladies was not actually on the searches for calling these in, and it was ones that it was showing only pregnant. So we couldn't find any SNOMED code. So how do we go about this to make sure moving forward that, you know, we're going to get the right code, because we could not find currently pregnant on the SNOMED list at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Let me just have a quick look, because I thought it was still there.
Yeah, because we had some issues there, because there were certain people that we knew were still pregnant, and they wasn't coming up on our searches when we was doing them.
Okay. I'm just quickly trying to bring it up.
Yeah, if you can find, I mean, I hope you can find it. I couldn't. It might just been a off day.
Absolutely correct. No, it doesn't come up. Right. Let me come back to you on that.
Okay, because as I say, it's you print out the list and think that everything is all okay. And if you're a large practice, you might have quite a large group of pregnant ladies, and it could be quite easy to miss someone if we haven't got the right code in.
Totally.
Thank you.
I'll give you advice on the best code to use. In the meantime, to be honest, if for these purposes, if there is anything like antenatal or consultation or something like that, it will be picked up.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? No.
There seems to be a few problems with the downloads, actually, Anna, Lacey, but we will send them via emails anyway. The documents that we've just published.
Yes,
so if you are having
an email, yep.
Okay, so I'm going to leave you because I need to restart my computer in the next 3 minutes so I can do the learning disabilities. So I hope to see you some of you there. See you later. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone.